Okay, Steve Martarano started his nearly 5-decade journalism career as a reporter for the Sacramento Union, where he covered the infamous Dorothea Puente boarding house murders, among many other stories. Sacramento then had two thriving and highly competitive local newspapers, the Morning Union and the Afternoon Bee, where I was a reporter. When the Bee became a morning paper and the Union eventually closed, Steve wisely began a second career handling communications for the State Department of Fish and Game, now Fish and Wildlife, and then for the Federal Fish and Wildlife Agency as a writer, photographer, and media spokesman on sometimes controversial issues, such as the eradication of the invasive northern pike at Lake Davis in Plumas County. He helped to turn a media nightmare into more positive coverage in state and national media, including my personal favorite, which I found on the web today, a 2007 headline in the New York Times: California officials tackle a toothy predator. Uh, Whatever, it was a great story, but got a little florid at times. Whatever the cause, this is quoting, whatever the cause, the pike is not a friendly newcomer to any ecosystem, a slender, razor-toothed hunter that can grow to more than 3 feet long. The pike has been known to devour anything it can get its pointed maw around, including frogs, waterfowl, and legend has it, small dogs. Close quote. After retiring from, and Steve was quoted in that article, after retiring from government work, Steve embarked on a third career as a writer and photographer for several publications and is a regular contributor to the publications in the nonprofit Solving Sacramento Journalism Collaborative. Nonprofit journalism gives me hope for the future of our profession. His 10-year association with Comstock's regional business magazine has resulted in 3 cover articles, the latest in April on the former Oakland Athletics arrival in West Sacramento. His popular Off the Beaten Track monthly Comstocks feature took first place for tourism and travel reporting at last year's California News Publishers Association Awards. His remarkable range of subjects includes photographing Tom Petty's Golden One Center show a month before he died, as well as covering virtually every professional sports team in Sacramento, and much more. He has also been tremendously supportive of students aspiring to journalism careers and was a popular guest speaker in my Sac State classes, even donating a valuable camera he wasn't using to the State Hornet. And he created an endowed scholarship for journalism students at his alma mater, the University of Nevada, Reno. We're very fortunate to have him share some of his stories with us today. So, Steve?
Thank you, Sigrid. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's kind of overwhelming. When Sigrid first asked me, if I wanted to do this, frankly, I kind of was unsure of exactly how to approach the 46 years that I've been in Sacramento. I've been extremely lucky to be able to. I've always been I know it's kind of a cliche, but I've always wanted to tell stories and love telling stories, and I've been able to do it for a daily newspaper when newspapers were really thriving for 10 years, and then as a public information officer, public affairs for both state and federal, been able to tell stories in that way, which was to me, very enjoyable. I know a lot of people kind of maybe look down on government public affairs stuff, but I enjoyed it, and it enabled me to start getting into photography, which I'll get into later too. But it's been so it's been just a very enjoyable career. I've been able to tell stories, which has been my goal all along, and today I just want to kind of share some of those 46 years going back to when I arrived here in 1979. So let's get going. So that's some of the press passes I've had over the years. I put that together for a Solving Sacramento training thing a while back, and it's kind of an interesting collage. I've always wanted to do that. Um, every journalist has sort of a beginning point, right? And for me, it was, I mean, I worked on my student, newspaper in junior high school, but then the summer of 1971, when I was 15 and going to be a sophomore in high school, the city of Reno had a program called the Teenage Opportunity Program that, put students into law enforcement, any kind of field of interest. And there was actually 4 of us. We were all sophomores to be that landed at the Reno Evening Gazette. Later, it joined with the Nevada State Journal to be Reno Gazette Journal. But in those days, it was just an evening paper. And shadow journalist, worked in the newsroom every day from 8 a.m. to noon. And we actually, they sent us out on a lot of stories. I had about 10 bylines that summer, including a front page one. But I put this up because, one day we go in and they said, let's go over to Harrah's, which was probably about 4 blocks away from the newspaper office. So I walked down there, and there was Sammy Davis Jr., and he was doing a drug, they called it a Reno Spectacular to fight drug abuse. And so they gathered us all around, and there I am with I had a little clip-on tie and talking to Sammy Davis Jr. So that, but anyhow, that summer just, that sealed it for me, being that close to journalism. And I later, worked and interned at the Reno paper and worked all through high school, doing prep kind of high school stuff. Oh. Okay. And from there, I went to the University of Nevada, Reno, as Sigrid mentioned, and was a journalism major. And the twice daily newspaper was called The Sagebrush. It had no advisor. It was totally student run. And after 3 years working on the paper, I became the editor my final year. And these are just a couple photos from like 1978, I think it was, a staff photo that we did for the homecoming issue, and kind of a layout night. The Sagebrush was really instrumental, and one of the things that it helped me with is that I met the person who was covering Nevada sports for the Reno paper, named Dan McGrath. And I don't know if that name is familiar with anybody, because he later moved on he went to the Sacramento Union, and then later went on to the Chronicle, back to the Bee. He was sports editor. So, but when he left the Union, he told me, I mean, when he left the Reno areas to go to the Union, he told me, if when you get out, let me know. And so he ended up getting me a job, and the summer after I graduated. So that's how I ended up in Sacramento. And this was the Sacramento Union. My wife Sharon took this photo in she's here, in 1987, one of her first trips to Sacramento. And the Union is like 301 Capitol Mall, which is just the big hole in the ground now. But it was a great place to work. And I graduated in May of 1979 and got hired in September. And I remember coming out here and talking to them about a job, and my father and I drove out from Reno on a Saturday to do an interview. And I came out of there and I said, I think I'm going to get hired. So we went, just kind of drove around the area, seeing if there was any apartments available. And Capitol Towers, just a couple blocks away, had a garden apartment for $190 a month, which was actually lower than I expected to be paying for something in Sacramento. But I said, well, hold it, and when I get hired, I'll let you know. And then that Wednesday, I got the job. So came out and keep going back. And this is actually the first the front page of the Union the day I started. And it's one of the things that's significant is that up to just a couple of months ago, I couldn't have accessed this other than through microfiche. But the Union is now, all their archives are online, and you go to newspapers.com and any places. So every story is on there, which is just, for someone that worked there for 10 years, it's it's kind of an amazing resource. I saved a lot of clips, but it's nothing like being able to go through and you find a lot of things. So the first day I started, actually ended up being Dan McGrath's last, and he had gotten a job at the Chronicle. So that night, everybody went over to the David's Brass Rail, and which was where the Hyatt is now. It was on 12th and L, and it was a great old place. And the reason I have this photo is, let me pull this quote. But the reason I have this photo is the Bee that week did a story on an employee with actually a staffer with Governor Jerry Brown, Michael Kagan, and he was kind of a fun-loving guy, I guess. But this was the exact week that I started at David's, and they did the picture of David's Brass Rail, and it was a real colorful place. It was part of a kind of a lot of bars and places that people would gather in Sacramento. And while doing research for this, I came across a quote from that George Skelton, who's still doing work for the LA Times, wrote in 2005 for Wing Fat, Frank Fat's son memorial, and he just talked about what Sacramento was like. He said the 60s into the early 80s were years when politicians, lobbyists, and some of the journalists would make the Capitol circuit at night. We'd start perhaps at Posey's, a huge horseshoe bar on the south side of the Capitol, or maybe David's Brass Rail, a hole in the wall on the north side, frequented by Governor Jerry Brown. Then we'd hit respectable Ellis's, I never went there, on a new office building, head to Fats for dinner, and would wind up getting blotto at the grungy Torch Club half a block away, playing an oldies jukebox. So that was kind of the scene then, and actually David's Brass Rail had, when Jerry Brown's last, when his first governorship ended, they had a big going away party there, and I didn't go, but I heard about it, and Linda Ronstadt supposedly was there, but that photo on the right is from 1983. I was at the Union. I wanted to post this story. When I was at the Union, I started sports and then moved over to the extra section, which was kind of the precursor to the Bee's Neighbor. They actually stole the idea, covering outlying areas, and one of my areas was Fair Oaks. And I did a story in 1983 on the honorary mayor, quite a colorful character named Bill Withrow. And so the story ran, and then 5 years later, I was the police reporter at the Union, and one day I get a call that there was a shooting in Fair Oaks, and so I head out there, and it turned out to be Bill Withrow shot by a business associate at the same exact desk that I interviewed him at. So that was just an interesting story. And I actually had the old clip, but I didn't have anything from the when he was shot, and so I was able to find that through the archives that have now run. And then of course, I can't talk about the years I was the police reporter at the Union without mentioning the Dorothea Puente murders. And one of the things that was significant was when the Union had gone tabloid about several months, well, actually at the beginning of the year of 1988. And so when the Puente story hit, it was like front page news every day, and it was perfect for the tabloid. And so sales skyrocketed, short-lived, but they really did, and it was just an interesting time. But I was the daytime police reporter, and one day it was November 11th, 1988, Veterans Day. So all the regular police spokespersons and everything weren't around, and I got a call. Well, actually, I was checking on there was a body that had been found off Highway 160, and I was just kind of checking on it if it was a homicide or not. And when I called the watch commander at about 2 o'clock, he said, "And that's not a homicide, but if you're really interested in bodies," that's how he put it, "go out to 14th and F." I said, "Well, what's going on out there?" He said, "Just go." So I headed out there, alerted our desk. It was only a few blocks away from our office, and pulled up. And just as I pulled up, there was a Channel 40 van pulling up right behind me, and we were actually the first on scene. And we get there and walk over, and the police homicide lieutenant Bill Inlow was walking up, and he seemed kind of excited because they'd been digging all day. He's like, "We just found what we were looking for, and a body, pieces of a body." And then I'll never forget, the whole front area was paved over, and he said, and then beginning tomorrow we're going to just start getting all the pavement out. We're going to start digging, and so that's what happened. And so that first day, this is actually the story from the first day that showed up in the next Saturday's paper, where I was out there pretty much first, but in those days there was no internet, so it wasn't like you could put something up online and kind of scoop everybody. You still had to wait for the next morning, but I was still able to kind of talk to people without all the hordes of reporters that started to show up. And the last quote I had was from a next door neighbor because we didn't have a whole lot of information. We just, we ended up finding out that she had been did some jail time for drugging somebody like a few years before in Sacramento. So the pieces were kind of coming together. They took her back to the office for interviews, and but I remember there was one guy that was like leaving that I was the first one to be able to talk to. He was leaving with a box of stuff, and he's like, "I'm getting out of here. I've seen digging and all kinds of things, so I'm gone." And then no one ever really saw him again. So the first day, they found the one body and questioned her, and then the next day was a Saturday, and I didn't work, but I followed the news, and they ended up finding 2 bodies on Saturday, and then 2 more on Sunday. And meanwhile, Puente had gone. They let her go down to the Mansion Inn where she was going to talk to a cousin, and then she took off. So you had by this time, the 5 bodies found, and then so by the time Monday rolled around, it was an absolute zoo. There was international media there, and then meanwhile they found 2 more bodies. So the police department was just getting hammered, and I did 2 stories for that paper, including the second one, Yard of Death, attracts morbid curiosity seekers. And there was, like we said, 500 people in the street, in trees and everything. So that story continued. And in 2015, the new owners, the new owner. Can everybody see here? Am I blocking you guys? In 2015, new owners had taken over, and they sort of embraced the legacy of the property, I guess you could put it, and had several tours, and then a documentary called "The House is Innocent," that if anybody, you can find it online, it's for free. It's 15 minutes. It kind of details, but that debuted on this day, and they had at the Sacramento Film Festival, and so they had a tour that day of like 600 people, and I got some photos, and including the one on the bottom is the room where she supposedly put the bodies out in repose. So it was creepy, but extremely popular. I think 600 people they said went through. So I moved into government public affairs. My first job was with the Board of Equalization, and we had just moved into a new building at 5th and N in 1993. And then one Saturday morning or Friday morning, a person came in, shot up the control console. We had all kinds of security, which the other building that we were in had none. And then he went to the 19th floor, took a bunch of people hostage, and then the police ended up coming in, and the SWAT team and shot and killed him in the building. So I was the kind of the main spokesperson on that story. And the photo on the right is from a TV clip on the Sunday after the shooting. We led tours throughout for all the media because employees were coming back on that Monday, and we wanted to show that the building was back to normal, but that was quite a day. And then Lake Davis, which Sigrid had mentioned. And I that was 8 years of I was at Fish and Game for 11 years, and essentially, when I first started, they did a treatment of rotenone that I wasn't really a part of. That it was handled by another office at Fish and Game, and then but it was highly controversial, and um, it was the mayor chained himself to a buoy. It was part of their drinking water. Fish and Game didn't do a really good job communicating what was happening, and then a year and a half later, Pike came back, and by that time we had kind of a new direction, and I was in charge of communications at that time, but I wanted to show this one, and everybody from the New York Times, USA Today, LA Times, the Bee covered it heavily, did stories on this. But the Sports Illustrated did something in 2003 and had the best lead. So if hell has a lake, you know what it's stocked with. We're talking here about a fish that only its mother and PETA could love. The northern pike is a homely, slimy, soft-toothed predator. It is also as resilient as Aerosmith, which explains the concussive thuds emanating from beneath the surface of Lake Davis this week. One of the things we did to kind of try everything was the detonation cord, and that's where this came from. So there's just a few photos from some of the media coverage we got. Actually, when Sigrid mentioned this story, I pulled that out. That's the one on the top from the New York Times that ran. And then the bottom photo, I just wanted to include. I don't know if any of you remember Tamara Keith, who was with KQED and covering a lot of environmental stories. So we worked with her heavily. But she's the NPR White House correspondent now. So you might see her on some of the talk shows and things like that, but that was like 20 years ago, Tamara Keith. So. And then one thing I was really proud of was we did turn the community around, and it was as a communications person working in government, that's a story you live for. And 2 years after we did the successful treatment, Island Press, which is kind of an environmental publication that is still going. You can still find this story on there. They did a story about how the California Fish and Game community turned community opinion around. So I felt very proud of that. And then moving on to the Fish and Wildlife Service with kind of a more national focus. In 2010, there was the Deepwater Horizon oil spill covered several states in the southern states, and it started in May, and I ended up getting deployed to Grand Isle, Louisiana, which is the very tip, but it was right by the Battateria Bay, where there was a lot of oil birds and everything, so the media sort of descended on there, and I went. So I was down there for almost 3 weeks, and taking media, a lot of Pulitzer Prize winning photographers. I don't know if anybody's heard of Carol Guzzi. She's won several with the Washington Post, and took them around. But one of the things that it really helped me with was just kind of number one, watching big time photographers, and I had a Kodak point and shoot, and just realizing that the opportunities I was having, and I needed to kind of learn photography and learn what I needed to do. And so, this helped me when I got back, and the office ended up getting me a camera that I used, but then I ended up buying a lot of my own equipment and starting to do all stuff on my own. And one of the I wanted to show this photo because I don't know if you recognize it, but it was I took it in 2017. And the Associated at the hatchery up in Anderson, and it was. Then we ended up running it a year later with a story. We did a fish planning story of a winter run with NOAA and Fish and Game or then called Fish and Wildlife. But the photo was picked up by Associated Press, and so it's in their database. and it just continues to run. I would guess hundreds of times with stories. The Wall Street Journal, that was kind of an early one, and the one on the bottom is just ran in the Smithsonian magazine. I don't know if it actually ran in the magazine, but it was online. It was a Facebook post. So it just has really kind of endured, and it sort of it continues to amaze me. I mean, it's not that special of a photo, but it just has been relevant, and that's what makes it newsworthy, I guess. These are some of the publications that I've been working with while I was still at Fish and Wildlife Service. I started doing some work for Sacramento Press. As I mentioned, I got my own equipment and started to do photography, and soon realized that I could get into a lot of things. Even though Sacramento Press didn't pay, it was kind of a community based, but I got a River Cats credential like first year 2014. Sac Republic FC had started that year, and so I just was doing a lot of that on my own time, and then it branched off into Comstock's magazine. There was an editor, Allison Joy, that was at Sacramento Press, and she became the editor, one of the editors at Comstock's, and so I started doing things there. And then an editor at Comstock's, Sina Christian, is now the main managing editor at Solving Sacramento, and as Sigrid had mentioned, so I've been doing some work for them too. And that's a collaborative that includes 7 publications, and you write one story for Solving Sacramento, and it could go in the Sacramento Business Journal, Sac News and Review, the Observer, Cap Public Radio. So it's only about 3 years old, so check it out. And one of the reasons I really wanted to get into photography was sports. I was a high school baseball player, and so I've been lucky to be able to have the opportunities to do everything from the NCAA championships to Sac Republic FC, Mavericks, surfing. I've been able to shoot that, and the Homeless World Cup is down below. That's a Ukraine goalie. So. And then music was another thing that I was able to do. And when I was at the Union, when I moved out of sports, I went into a job that was more regular hours, and the showcase section, which was the entertainment side of the Union, I was able to do things as a freelance writer. I mean, they would actually pay me as a freelancer, and even though I was a staff writer, so it was just a great gig. And you just did a lot of music reviews and everything from Springsteen to Tom Petty and Bob Dylan, and the First Bridge benefit concert, Weird Al. They weren't even limited to Sacramento concerts to review, so it was just a different time. And some of the music I've been able to do, Tom Petty's, the one on the top, Tom Petty's last show was at Golden One Center a month before he died, and I was a longtime fan, and so that was pretty poignant to be able to be one of the few in the pit for that. And I've done several music festivals, the City of Trees, and the Revolution concert just recently at Heart Health Park there at Cal Expo, and also some Soul Bloom shows, and then Mick Martin, who just passed away just a couple months ago, I worked with him at the Union. He was actually the movie reviewer at the Union in the 80s, and so I worked with him on several things, and he was really instrumental. And I did some work for Pulse magazine and the old Tower Records giveaway, and I always enjoyed doing his shows. I'll never forget when I was at the Union. He was kind of done with the business, and him telling me, I'm done with it. I'm never going back. And then once the Union started to kind of go down, he got back into it in the early 90s, and then, finished strong. He was still working right up until the end. And when I started with Comstocks, I was doing some River Cats photography the first year. and there was a player with the Fresno Giants, who was the Giants AAA team at the time, and he had a lot of people there, and he had a couple home runs. I was wondering who is he, and found out he was from Roseville, and had a strong family here and everything. So I thought it would be really interesting to do a story on a young minor leaguer. You know what they make. He had a $1 million bonus, so he was kind of unique, but just what they make and how they spend their money. And so I pitched it to Comstock's, to the editor, Allison Joy, that I had mentioned before, and so it ended up being my first story in Comstock's, and it was the front page. This wasn't my photo. It was a photographer from LA named Kyle Monk that did the photo, but just so that was my first introduction with Comstock's in February 2015. And then with Comstock's, I've been with them for about 10 years now, and just doing a variety of stories. And in early February of 2021, I did Off the Beaten Track. I started that. It was a new feature, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, covering sort of local businesses, out of the way businesses, unique, that only the locals knew about, and that kind of thing. And so it took me to a lot of really fun places. And the one on the Juicy's place, had anybody ever been there? This photo was actually about a month before it burned down. And so I was assigned to do the story for the October issue, and I was in there taking photos and talking to the folks. It's a 124-year-old structure, and so then, you know, I turned the story in, and then about a month later, you know, Sharon, my wife, is looking at her phone, and she's like, "Aren't you doing a story on Juicy's place?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and it was burning. So it burned down on like one afternoon. So they got the story, because I'd already turned the story in. They got it online the next day. So and then they ran in the magazine. But just seeing the photos, you know, knowing it's so that was just very tragic, and one of the most memorable stories I've done. And then, okay, here we are at the A's. And when I started at the Union, I was deemed the minor league writer. And Sacramento had no minor league team. This is the early 80s. So I had to go to Stockton Ports, the Lodi Dodgers. They had Class A teams. Plus, I would do like a weekly notebook on local players and what they were doing in the minor leagues. I did stories on Steve Sachs, and it was really a lot of fun, but we didn't have a team, and we could only dream. And so I wrote several stories. The Sacramento Solons, the last minor league team, had left in 1977, and they had played like 3 years at Hughes Stadium, which was a total kind of joke, and then they couldn't build anything, so they left. And when this story ran in 1981, it was still 19 years before the Rivercats came. So that's how long of a stretch there was in Sacramento with no professional teams. Then all of a sudden we have two baseball teams, including a major league team. And this is from the press conference when they announced that the A's were going to be here for the beginning of the 2025 season for 3 years. And you know, it was quite the scene. The Rivercats had played the Giants the week before, and there'd been some rumblings and a lot of rumors and everything. And then they announced it really quick, and this was the turnout we got, which would really continue. And so I was lucky to have done. I did a couple stories on the A's when they were trying to leave, and then I was able to attend the last game of the season in Oakland Coliseum, closing out like a 55-year history there. So it was really, as a baseball fan, I've always been kind of conflicted about the fact that they left Oakland. I probably would have preferred to see them build something there and stay, just with the history and everything. So it was a very poignant day. And so I was assigned to do a story on the A's coming in for the 2025 season, and was able to get to spring training, and got this photo, and ended up doing a cover story for the April issue, and some photos inside, and so that started, the A's being here. And opening night was quite the scene. 150 media in attendance. And, Seven Hills Park is not built for 150 media, that's for sure, as they quickly found out. And of course, that wasn't a normal night thing, but that was the case there. So it was seeing Major League Baseball in Sacramento become a major league town is an interesting phenomenon, something I'd never thought I'd see in my lifetime. So I spent the good part of the summer out there. I didn't have a daily press pass, but I was able to get one when I wanted to. So I ended up doing a couple stories for Comstocks at the end of the year one, and then one after the opening series, and then one in the middle of the season for Solving Sacramento. So I was out there for about eight games with a credential, and then I also still had my River Cats pass, and so it was doing that, and then went to several games on my own. And that's Nick Kurtz on the right there. He just won Rookie of the Year, had a great season, and then Aaron Judge on the left. He just won the MVP for his third time. So it was fun seeing those guys in Sacramento. And I just wanted to post this photo. With the River Cats, you'll often get players coming through on rehab assignments. And this year, the Dodgers AAA team, the Oklahoma City, came in a couple times, and I was able to catch pitchers, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, and Emmett Sheehan do rehab assignments, and then they all ended up pitching in Game 7 of the World Series. So that's why I posted this. and then this is from an Instagram post, the last game of the season by the photographer Sarah Nevis, and it's this kind of cute and poignant. It was fun. And looking forward. Hope I get to do some more next year. You always need an outlet for doing that. So, so that's about it for my presentation. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any questions? Let me get up there.
Wait. Stop.
Use this one.
He needs one.
Somebody up here.
I just wanted to know your reflection on how the media has changed.
How the media has changed. Yeah. Well, obviously there's not as many media. I remember, is this working? Yeah. I remember when I was at the Board of Equalization, they had the local capital media, and most of them were at 10th and L there. And I would do like a stack of 100 news releases before internet mainly, and just walk them over and walk around and to all the different offices and put them in there. And now I'd say there's probably maybe 5. And so that's, and of course the internet's just changed everything. I mean, when I started, it was IBM Selectric typewriters and put them in the slots and it would go up to the thing. And at least we had these system integrators, computers on our desks that we were able to do word processing. But I've seen it from that and all the way through, and then working in the media and being a reporter, which is probably the last 10 years have probably been the most fun in a lot of ways, just being able to do photography and all that. But the way I'll write stories has changed in this, the way you could use the internet for everything. Not so much, the AI aspect, although now if you do a Google search, that's basically AI in some form, but just being able to check everything. And I sometimes wonder how I, check spellings. It seems like there's a lot of different spellings for names now, first names, and you have to kind of get that right. And just doing all that kind of checking, I sometimes wonder how I did it in the days where you just had the newspaper morgue and you would dig old stories out of that. And now it's just so easy to find sort of everything.
Now, I'm just curious, do you get royalties when they reuse the pictures that you took?
The government ones, no, those are public domain. I get asked that all the time. And my answer is, well, that's where your government taxes go, you know, because it's true. I got paid through the Fish and Wildlife Service, and you know, there's a lot of other photos out there on that we put on Flickr, and that still get used, but nothing like that one winter run salmon photo. That no royalties. I wish.
Expanding a bit on the media question that Patty asked, you've been on both sides of the quote journalistic fence, as I have. They used to say, you know, you're crossing over to the dark side. You don't see that as much anymore. I mean, you've always been a journalist. How do you explain the transition and how your work was different depending on which side you were on, if that's even accurate?
Well, I mean, I always enjoyed working with reporters, and sometimes that was to not so much detriment, but you know, some of the people I worked with in government, they kind of were, you know, maybe you're getting too close here, but I always loved working with reporters, and I loved shaping, you know, their stories. And then, you know, and then getting back that Andrew Suzak story, that was the first kind of true story I wrote in about 20 years, and so it was really hard in a lot of ways to put together, but just well, yeah, I mean, you know, I stayed away from you know, in the stories I've done for Comstock and others, I stayed away from wildlife stories, environmental stories for the most part. I did one photo gallery at Nimbus Dam, but that's been basically it. So I've tried to really stay away. When I was with Fish and Wildlife Service, our office was the Delta. We had the Delta smelt biological opinion, and you know, so anytime we got attacked, and we got attacked by everybody from Donald Trump to Sarah Palin to everybody on Delta smelt, and still do. He still brings it up, and that was our office that we were doing the biological opinion for that. We had put that together. So I try to stay away from that. It helps me, you know, kind of, I don't really deal with government officials too much, but, you know, knowing how public affairs people work has sort of helped. And, but it was a pretty easy transition in a lot of ways, because I just enjoyed working with reporters and enjoyed shaping their stories.
Oh, I was just going to ask Janet.
Having a little video issues, so. Let's see, it says, have you ever been threatened or prevented from telling a story you thought should go public?
One that I worked on, I don't think so. Threatened, no. I can't honestly say I have. I mean, the Lake Davis was highly contentious. I mean, they had, there was a lot of animosity there, and by the time we went back in to do the second, after the first one had failed, and we were doing the second one, there was a lot of animosity, and so there was tension there. I can't say we ever were prevented from doing anything.
And on the other hand, what was your favorite story? What was the thing you enjoyed the most?
As a writer, reporter, or boy, it's hard. You know, the Lake Davis thing rings out because it turned out so well from a public affairs standpoint. You know, I've done so many stories. I've been really lucky, like with Comstock, being able to do a lot of photo galleries on. You know, I did one on the Last Picture Show, the drive-in theater there off Highway 50. That was really fun, and the underground Old Sacramento tours that they do, and it's just been so many. It's really, you know, the Juicies really stands out because of being there, and then you know, probably I did about 50 off the beaten track stories.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question as I'm walking. So your photography's changed quite a bit, and what are you shooting now?
I still shoot the old DSLRs. So I have a Canon, a couple Canons. But yeah, it has changed. I mean,
As a just a quick question. As a journalist, as a writer, are you considering writing some kind of book regarding your journey? Because you been a writer and a reporter through this huge change before the internet, you know, when you came out of arena, all the way through to where we are now with so much information, too much information, and so much differences between truths and untruths and all of that. But you've had a journey during that whole process. Have you ever considered maybe
Thank,
chronologizing like that for us?
you know, when you mention, you know, now it's so hard to sort of focus. I can remember when I was like a daily newspaper reporter, you'd come in, you have a story, maybe you have to get it in for the 6 o'clock deadline. You come in at like 5, and you could just sit at your desk and just, you know, pound it out. And you did that day after day after day, and there was no internet, there was no text messages bombing you, no emails. And now it's like there's always something else to look at. And sometimes I'm kind of amazed at myself and how I've been able to come up with this body of work. But you know, it would be interesting, you know, probably not myself, but it would be interesting to be part of some sort of, you know, book effort, book project that kind of looks at that. Because it would be an interesting thing to sort of talk about, because I have seen a lot of changes.
Can you pass that down?
What advice would you give to a Sac State freshman journalism major? Change majors or go for it?
Yeah, it's a lot different than when I got out, that's for sure. And I, you know, I have a couple scholarships with the Nevada. When I was there, it was just a department, 2 floors on one building, and now it's a full school. That's really good. But it has changed. It has changed so much. I mean, back then you could focus on print, you could focus on, and then really probably, you know, good chance to getting, if you were any decent at all, you could probably get a job at a daily newspaper. I only, you know, my goal coming out of college was just working in a daily newspaper, and I was able to do that. And now it's just much more, you know, fragmented, and there's so many other different ways to go. And I see like Solving Sacramento is really good with working with students. And that's a real effort of theirs, is to use student freelancers. And one of the scholarships I have is a best published story. It's for the student that has the best, you know, deemed by professors at the University of Nevada to what's the best story that they've produced that year. And so I've always encouraged getting published, because it gets you out there, and it shows people, you know, your work is out there for review, and that there's nothing that makes you better. And so I encourage that, finding outlets when you're in college, you know, at the college paper, or you have opportunities, like you could usually get into music festivals if you're in that kind of thing. So use that tool, and just write and try to find places to publish. It's hard. It's really hard. Are you trying to do that, or? Oh, okay.
Any other questions? Any more on Zoom? Okay, well, we thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it.